Welcome. I'm Bernice Ross, CEO and President of Brokerage Up and RealEstateCoach.com. And I'm really excited to welcome our guest today, John Giffen. He is the broker of record, the director of broker operations. He goes by Bob, broker of the brokers for Benchmark Real Estate. They're based in Nashville, Tennessee, and their company did close to $3 billion last year. So Bob, actually, John knows what he's talking about because he's supervising all those brokers. And he has a great session for us today. This thing is, when I saw this article, I was so impressed. And it's how to get house hunting clients to sign a buyer-broker agreement. And most agents are terrified of going for this. So John's going to share his secrets today. John, welcome. Thank you for being with us today.
Well, thank you, Bernice. I really do appreciate it. Thanks for inviting me.
Well, also, you have a book that you wrote called Do You Have a Minute? And anybody who's been in management knows that, oh, you got a minute?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
But you wrote that book to answer like 50 different key areas of challenges that agents face. So then, do you have a minute? And by John Giffen. So check that book out. It's a great read. But today we're going to do this deep dive into the buyer's broker agreement. So John, could you begin by explaining the purpose of buyer's broker's agreement and how they differ from just what we normally do if we don't get that agreement signed?
I think, and that's a great question because, and that sort of goes into when we talk to a buyer, why do you want me to sign this? And I believe it centers on a partnership. It really, and probably loyalty that's tied into a partnership. We're going to walk together. I as your agent, you as the buyer, in finding your home. And there's certain things that this agreement will allow me to do. It'll allow me to work in your interest and your interest only, and negotiate for you, advocate, protect you. I think a lot of people don't realize that agency agreements provide a lot of protection for the client. And we've talked in the past in classes and when we took our test for licensing that there's a difference between a client and a customer. This agency agreement, this buyer rep agreement, creates the client, and we have specific responsibilities to the client. So I think it's really about the partnership.
Well, certainly about the partnership. And I would make the argument, I'm a good buyer's agent. I'm going to do all of that anyway. But what you're saying is, and again, agency is a patchwork quilt of various laws. It's just so different. We can't really dive into that here, nor what you want to. But this idea that in some states, you have a designated agent or something that's where the buyer's not getting represented exclusively, but almost every state, as far as I know, has fiduciary, has a fiduciary requirement on taking listings. So you create that same fiduciary relationship as you were describing with the buyer by signing this. So if you could elaborate a little bit more the difference between just the agency relationship. I think you did a pretty good job of it already.
Yeah.
Want to say anything more about that?
I just think that it sets you apart from the fact that the additional characteristics of an agency agreement, of a buyer representation agreement, is your loyalty to the client, your obedience to that client. You need to be obedient to all of their interests, all their lawful instructions. That fiduciary responsibility is sort of like the attorney-client privilege, or attorney-client relationship, excuse me. I think that's critical. You don't have 20 attorneys in that law firm representing you. You have one attorney. The same is true with the buyer rep agreement. It provides you to be the sole agent in that firm compared to all the other agents or other agents that are out and about in the market. You are the one person that's going to take care of this buyer.
So in the article that I saw that you did on Inman that really made me really caught my attention, you said there's 6 standards of fiduciary duty. What are the 6 standards, John?
It is, we used to, and Bernice, you remember when you were in your pre-license class a couple of months ago, it's, they use that acronym old car. Remember that old car? And It basically, the specific standards of fiduciary duty as a real estate professional: obedience, loyalty, disclosure, confidentiality, accounting, and reasonable care and diligence.
I think in
And
California, it was just reasonable care and diligence is what,
yeah,
yeah, because we didn't have that, but that's going to vary. But those 6 standards, would you go back through them again? Because I think they're
yeah,
so
it
important.
is. It's very simple. It's obedience. You're following the lawful and ethical instructions of your client. We're not going to follow unlawful instructions. We're going to
Yes.
follow lawful. We're going to be loyal to the client's interest. Loyalty. That's the second letter. Loyalty. We're going to disclose if there are adverse facts related to the property. If we know about them, even as a buyer's agent, we find out there's something wrong with the house, we have to disclose that. Confidentiality. There's certain things in a real estate transaction that we need to keep confidential. Uh, if your client's going through a divorce, or I'm in Nashville, Tennessee, and we have a lot of celebrities, country music stars and music people. They don't want to know that they're out looking at homes, and they want you to keep it confidential and their name out of it. Accounting. If we are given earnest money, trust money, escrow money, we've got to make sure that we steward that money and take care of it, because it's not ours. We have to make sure it gets into an escrow account. And reasonable care and diligence is that we're going to handle all issues, all situations in the transaction with the utmost care and diligence as a professional agent, because that's who we are. That's what makes us professional. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think I couldn't agree more. And what strikes me when you were talking about the privacy issue with the exclusive buyers agreement, it didn't used to be this way in California, but now it is. The listing agent, when there's multiple offers, can shop those offers.
Oh, yeah.
And if you've got a buyer's agreement, a buyer's exclusive buyer broker agreement, I wonder, they may not be able to do that because that person's under a different agreement. And I don't think that gives the listing agent the right to do that. And I'm not an attorney. That's something that's a
Right.
call to an attorney, to your
Yes,
broker
exactly.
hotline,
We may play one on
your
TV,
agent
but not in
hotline,
real
legal
life.
hotline in your state
Yeah,
association or your local
exactly.
association.
Yeah.
But
I think it's
I
true.
make that argument certainly to protect my client's privacy.
Yeah.
Now, your next step was to convey your buyer value proposition based
Yes.
on quality service. What kinds of things were you including in that, John?
Well, I think you need to, and I had a class the other day, and I was on Zoom, and I was talking to about 300 agents in the greater Nashville area. And I talked about value proposition. What is your unique value proposition as an agent? What is it that you bring to the table that sets you apart from the other agents that are in your market? What is it that makes you unique? And they all stopped and think, and we went to breakout rooms, and I was fortunate enough to be in one. And I asked 4 of them, write down your unique value proposition. And I wrote mine down, which I always knew mine. Mine was, in order to have quality customer service, I was shepherd of the transaction. I was the one who kept the transaction moving forward. I communicated. I kept the drama away from my clients, the trauma from the clients. I mean, there's drama and trauma in these transactions.
Isn't that the truth?
Yeah. I was available at 9:30 at night if they had a question. Real estate's a lifestyle. It's not a job. It's a lifestyle. I was available for them. If I needed to run paperwork over or something, anything they needed, I was there for them. And so my value proposition was I was a true shepherd. I was going to keep the wolves away from the sheep, being my clients. And
I like the analogy of the sheep and the wolves, especially for a lot of clients who may be purchasing their first home and they really are vulnerable. And there are people out there who will take advantage. And again, that's my role, and your role as an agent is to protect them. So that's a great analogy.
yeah.
So I was intrigued by the next one of these. You said you'll get more without paying more. Now, how am I going to get more? I understand I'm going to have a better level of service, but I don't get how I get more money or Am I getting more
Well,
of something else?
I think this is educating the consumer. I think a lot of buyers, and I'm really big in consumer education, client education, they need to understand how we operate. Real estate is a very noble profession, and what we do, I equate to what an attorney does for their client, what a doctor does for their patient. And I think some buyers feel like I'm going to have to pay you to help me find a house. And I explained to them that depending on which state you're in, and the example in Tennessee is that our agency laws make me an exclusive a designated buyer representative, and the funds that I'm paid come out of closing from escrow that the listing broker, is going to share some of their compensation. So you don't have to pay me anything, but I'm going to go and negotiate for you. I'm going to get you the best deal for your house. And it's not going to cost you anything. If anything, it'll save you money.
Now, how does it work if, let's say that, they make an offer on a listing where there's where the cooperating agent gets way less than on average, whatever that may be.
Right.
And,
Yeah.
do you agree to accept what is being offered by that agent, that listing agent, or do you say, well, I've got an agreement for X dollars and you have to deliver on that?
Everything in real estate is negotiable. So I say that at the get-go.
Yes.
But one of the nice things about the buyer representation agreement is, and again, this is part of educating the client about how we operate our business, is in Tennessee, and we use our state forms from Tennessee Realtors, formerly Tennessee Association Realtors. And there's a paragraph in there that talks about, in the event that the listing broker is not offering a commission, or if the commission is not available, then there will be a fee. And what that is, of course, is there's nothing set in stone, but there would be a cost for that. It really depends on your market and what's happening. I am very, very fortunate to work in a very cooperating MLS, and we are it's pretty much 50-50. The listing broker gets 50% and the buyer broker gets 50% of the commission. I'm not going to talk percentages because
no, we're not going to
Trust
talk
me,
percentages.
I've taught enough
say
classes.
if it's 10,000, let's say the commission's $10,000, and we get 5,000 and 5,000.
Yeah, exactly. And so, but I think it goes back to, this is how I get paid. And I tell the buyer that it's rare that we won't have cooperating compensation available.
Yeah, if you can buy a for sale by owner, yes, then you're agreeing to pay us.
And that's I have a whole nother tool for that. So.
Yes. And I don't doubt it. And okay, let's tell the story. How did you get into real estate, just real briefly?
The first thing you have to do, if you have a problem, you've got to admit that you've got a problem. And that's the first step to recovery. I actually was a FSBO, a for sale by owner. I was a private seller. I was one of these people who thought that I could go up on a Saturday morning to my local hardware store, get a for sale by owner sign, red ink, black background, put my phone number in the white space, bang it in the yard, put an ad in the paper. And of course, this was 27 years ago, and put an ad in the paper, and they would be flocking to my house. Well, they didn't flock. And it was a very painful experience. And as I shared with you offline, that if it had not been for a professional realtor who came in towards the end and saved our ship of a transaction, we would have never been able to sell that house. And I was convinced that if it had not been for that agent, I would not have seen the results that we saw. And so from that point on, 27 years, I have been the number one cheerleader of real estate professionals.
And now you supervise 1,200 agents and almost $3 billion of sales every year. Wow.
Yeah.
So your next steps were explain each part of the agreement and, and go over the agency based on
Yeah,
mutual consent. And that varies so much from state to
it
state.
does.
Yeah, go
I
take
would,
your state training on that.
right. I would rely on your association for, because they will offer classes on agency agreements, but also rely on your principal broker, your managing broker, to give you, or your broker in charge, depending which state you're in, who can help you. And they can, train you on the very, because no two buyer rep agreements are the same. I mean, ours is different in Tennessee compared to California, compared to where you are in Texas. Although I find that Texas and Tennessee are very similar in what they do, but there's still some very differing things. So I would rely on your association because they have professional trainers who will guide you through that.
And, I can't emphasize this enough. There are agents who like buyers so much that's all they do, and they refer out the seller leads. And I think the
Exactly.
National Association of Buyers Representatives
Yeah.
have
Yeah.
spoken for them. And, it's really just it's such a different mindset because the company I work for, we came out of the list,
Yeah.
list. And
Well, I started as a buyer's agent, and then I did transition into a listing agent. And most of my buyers were from my listings, from my sellers needing to find a house. But I still, I'm about ready to head out in about 3 weeks with my son and daughter-in-law who are recently married, and they're actually expecting their first child, and they've got to go find their first home. So I get to dust off my skill set as a buyer's agent to go find them a home, and I'm excited about it. And,
well,
it'll be
this
fun.
sounds like a, new grandbaby coming. It sounds like a wonderful opportunity and a great
Yes.
time to help them create that first home.
Yeah.
Now, your next and final principle was you're forming a partnership.
Yeah.
And could you say more about that, please? Because I think that's probably about the most important thing in terms of what this actually represents.
I think and as I said at the beginning, it's really about a partnership. We're doing this together. When I sit down with buyers and explain to them the process of the home buying process, and I've created a flow chart that takes them step by step to of how the home buying process works from beginning to end. And I said, I'm going to be with you at every step of this process. And part of this partnership is, in order for it to work, I need your help. I need you to make sure that, one, if you find a home, and I'm not with you, call me. I will, show you the house. If you're at a new construction site in a new community and there's a model home and the agent on site is there, let me know, because I want to be there to represent you. Representation in new construction is so important,
Oh,
and
good
people don't
golly, yes.
realize that. And it really depends on builders. We have national builders in Nashville that are building tract homes. We have custom builders. I said the benefit of having a realtor with you is so important because we know the process of new home construction, and we know what you don't need to do and what you do need to do. And so, again, it's knowing that I'm there with you. And
Just as an aside on that topic, which is incredibly important, most people who buy new homes don't realize if you ever needed an inspection, you needed on a new house. It takes like almost,
Oh yeah,
my experience has been, it takes about a year to get the kinks out.
it
You know,
does. It does. I mean, that's a really good point. And
yeah,
I've told
we
I've told
had
all of our agents, make sure that you are representing these clients. Even what I find is that a lot of agents who are representing sellers who then are building a home, they don't really, the seller says, the builder's there, they're going to take care of us the whole bit. I said, no, 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 no. Let me tell you why. So
you work for the builder.
exactly. Yeah. And I have a little section in the book about that too.
So let me ask you just what happens in that case where I have an exclusive buyer's agreement, and my buyers walk into this new construction and say, well, I have this exclusive buyer's agreement with this particular broker. Do you find some builders won't work with them if there's high demand, or is that?
I think it depends on the area of the country. And I think it depends on the supply and demand. we've been very fortunate. Now, we do have some cases, and what I've had to work through, and especially, and I've actually filed grievances against builders because their agents are realtors. And so, and I've told our agents that, if a builder says that you're going to make, that tells the client, I can save you a lot of money without, if you don't work with a realtor, which happens a lot. And so I get involved, and I basically say, listen, you're not going to save money. If anything, you're going to lose money. And because the value that we bring as that partner to ensure that you are protected and that you're not making decisions based on the beauty of a model home or the finishes that, they're trying to sell you. And, again, being an advocate, I will most definitely save you money. Trust me. But I do find that we've been very fortunate in this market in Nashville and Middle Tennessee. The builders will work with us, but we do have a few though that have been problematic. So, and I think you have that in California. I've heard horror stories, and Texas, different states. So really
different things in different places. So see what
yeah.
Now, what are the other aspects of the partnership? Because you actually have a list of the steps that you actually provide in terms of how the partnership works. Could you, you've referenced a couple of them, but could you go through them and kind of develop them out for us?
I have this home buying partnership acknowledgement form, and anyone can download this at my book website. Just go to doyouhaveaminutebook.com, and it's under resources, and there's PDFs that you can download for free. I created this form about 15 years ago, and it basically explains, and I use this in the beginning conference with a buyer, saying, this is how I operate. I believe we are partners in this process. One is you're going to work with me as your exclusive realtor. We will sign a buyer rep agreement at some point. It depends on the client, depends on the rapport we build. But that's when I explain the importance of buyer representation. I want them to seek immediate pre-approval for a loan, because I'm not going to put anyone in the car that can't afford the house. And I don't sell real estate as a hobby. And and then to contact me about any information on any property that you come across. Every buyer will have a stack of my business cards with them. And I'll make sure that I give some to if it's a husband, wife, or partner, I will make sure that each one of them has some of my business cards. To contact me at if you go to an open house and you like the house, call me and let the agent know that you're working with me. Don't negotiate without me being present. And that's so important, Bernice. A lot, and this is true with new construction. They will want to get into negotiations. Well, that can be a nightmare. FSBOs, like me, I was a FSBO. Negotiating with a FSBO is sort of like letting a baby have its stick of dynamite. So anyway, and speak with me a moment a concern arises. If you have any concern, call me. My phone's on until I am, asleep. Call me. Let me answer your questions or address your concerns. I'm here. And so I put this on a form, and I just asked the client to sign it, and I sign it. And I said, it's not a binding form. It's just an acknowledgement that you understand how I operate my business and that we're going to do this together. And I never, in all my years, except for a couple of times, and one is an example I put in the MN article, where someone walked away from me because I took care of them. And it's not that I'm bragging, but I did things the right way, and I treated them as partners in this, and I was there for them. And repeat business and referrals came from my buyer clients.
Well, it's such an important thing. We were doing a training session with my training partner, Greg McDaniel, and he goes through the services like you described that she's going to do. He says, here are the things I'm going to do. He says, and then he says, have you ever been, have you had somebody cheat on you in terms of a business deal or a game or, in any respect? You're not going to cheat on me, are you?
Yeah.
Don't
go behind my back.
Probably too. That might have something to do with it.
Well, and and I put in the article on Inman that and I go into more detail in the book about what happened to me, but it only happened once that I didn't have that loyalty agreement, that buyer representation agreement, and they went behind my back, and I lost out on $17,450 of commission. So
All it
that
takes
was a
is
hard.
one time, and then it's like
Yeah, and that was in 2005 or 2004. So
16, yeah,
it was
over
tough.
15 years.
Yes. So
So, John, to wrap up for today, what's one final piece of advice that you'd have for our viewers today?
I think one is be encouraged. Managing clients can be challenging, especially now. Um, you know, uh, it they are out looking at property without you, and when I say that, they're online. They're going on the various platforms like Zillow and Realtor.com and Trulia and various brokerage sites, and just be encouraged that there's relationships out there, and you need to build those relationships with people. Your sphere of influence is where you're going to get your business. Most of your business will come from those who know you, love you, and trust you. And always remember that, and always stay in front. And we've been talking about that lately with just the coronavirus and everything, that you've got to be in front of people and build those relationships, because those relationships can turn into these partnerships of buying homes. So be encouraged that, there's people that still need our services. There's a lot of people that need our services. And I believe that, and I think they always will.
Well, John, this has been a great interview today. We've been visiting with John Giffen. He is the broker of record, that is the director of broker operations for Benchmark Real Estate in Nashville, Tennessee. John, thank you for being with us today. Really terrific interview.
Bernice, I was more than happy. Thank you for having me.